everyone, my name is David, and today I'm going to record this video named What Happens After a Nuclear War. Let's get started. A nuclear war is what forever split human history into anything that happened before and the post-war apocalypse. In the worst case, the mass fires consumes everything within tens of thousands of square kilometers, killing hundreds of millions within hours. But the worst part comes. After that, a nuclear war could trigger a nuclear winter that might kill billions. Maybe even completely collapsing our civilization. But how does it work and what will it look like? Fire causes winter. When a nuclear weapon is detonated, a bubble of gas hotter than our sun is forced in existence so hot that everything within kilometers immediately begins to burn. The terror bubble expands rapidly, filling the sky over its target, creating a devastating shockwaves that cause almost all determined destruction. Basically, you break a lot of stuff and set it on fire. And in the worst case, it's turned into a firestorm that consumes everything and everyone on the ground. Right after the explosion, a gigantic mushroom cloud rises over the destruction, throwing over its preserved works. But in the following hours, it has a far more deadly cloud forms. The fire-burning cities of fields heat up so much air that creates its own microclimate and the wind system. Hot air and smoke rises, pulling in fresh air from the surrounding, and fresh oxygen stroking from the flames even more. This creates an updraft and forms a colossal cloud that carries the soot and aerosols from the flames high into the stratosphere. Under normal conditions, the soot rising from a big fire is quickly washed out by rain, but cloud can reach altitudes well above the height where rain clouds form. Was above the tropical case, there's simply no weather to remove the soot from the atmosphere, so it can stay aloft for years. If this happened to a single city, it's tragedy, but fairly more local nuclear war, wherein nations are following cold logics of multiply extract hundreds of even thousands nuclear weapons that all at once, creating hundreds of firestorms, up to 150 million tons of soot, the cube size of a skyscraper, directly into a stratosphere. In the next few days and weeks, the soot begins to the blanket and earth, absorbing the light high from the ground and preventing sunlight from reaching the surface. This is not like science fiction, where skies turn dark and the sun disappears. Winter is what happens when a little less sunlight hits the ground. Now suddenly, a lot less sunlight gets through. Yesterday, the world was normal. Today, nuclear winter begins. Winter causes hunger. How bad nuclear winter could be when an active area of research? It all hinges one thing. How much stuff will burn really hot? How many firestorms will be caused by the heat of the explosion? It depends on many factors, from the materials the city is made from to the time of the year, if its forest is nearby, and so on. So just keep in mind we're working on some assumptions. Here's the good news. Nuclear winter is not permanent and definitely no new ice age. The effect of the climate only lasts as long as the soot remains in the atmosphere, which at most a decade until it clears out and the temperature is normalized. The bad news causes almost immediate climate change within a few weeks. It disturbs our climate systems faster than any living thing can adapt to. This new climate change, our seasons are certainly all wrong. Winters are much longer, summers are shorter and colder or gone altogether. This also means less evaporation over the oceans within less rain and maybe large-scale droughts. This is bad because our food eats the sun. Without good summer and enough rain, growing season will shrink or even collapse. The majority of humanity lives in an area called mild latitudes, a strip of land where the ideal temperature is not for our species too hot or cold. It's also where the plants we eat grow best. The vast majority of food we eat stems from a few highly efficient crops, with mostly very agriculturally produce regions like the U.S. Great Plains or Hurricane. Bread and rice basket of the world. They get traded and shipped around the world. In the worst case, the full-scale nuclear war temperatures will probably stay below freezing for several years. Nothing can grow under these conditions, and the world bread baskets will turn empty. If the food production crashes, the world food producers would likely to raise prices or even stop selling foods to countries if they are still able to farm their fields at all. It's easy to calculate how many people can be alive on Earth, can produce and divide. You can produce and divide them by what the average person needs to survive. If you have more people than calories, then within a few weeks you don't anymore. Humanity only has a few weeks to supply crops and food, not enough to survive this drastic drop in production. But the climate change is not the only issue. Modern industrialization that relies on functioning supply chains to provide unthinkable amounts of industry produce fertilizer and chemicals to kill weeds and vermin. Massive numbers of specialized modern machine is plowing, sowing, harvesting, and destroying. After a nuclear war, especially the country that produces the food were part of the nuclear exchange, maybe simply no more fuel. Fertilizer or machines parts because there are no more oil ports than others essential infrastructures left, damaging global food production even more. Okay, so we set the stage. Let's look at what science says actual war could happen. The actual nuclear war. Today there are two main conflicts of science they are managing about. A nuclear winter, a nuclear war against India and Pakistan, and one against the US and Russia. The most likely smallest nuclear exchange would be fought today by India and Pakistan. With relatively low yield weapons, even a pretty mild like this, an immediate explosion would kill about 27 million people, which is horrible enough. Just a few hours more people would die in all of World War I. Zeus fires would not cause a nuclear winter, but a mild nuclear autumn. But this would even disrupt the climate. Thereby global agriculture enough to starve up to 250 million people worldwide. Unfortunately, India and Pakistan are an arms race and have increasing the powers of warheads in their essentials. In the next stage of escalation, with wars of hundreds of nuclear weapons, all the bombs and fire destroying many major populations and killing over 100 million people. A war on the scale would cause a nuclear winter that would damage global agriculture enough to cut available calories for humanity in half. The number of people that will starve to death would be highly as 2 billion. In 1 of 4 humans alive today. The worst case scenario is a full scale of war between NATO nations and Russia or China, which also continues built its nuclear essentials. In a war between former, future, and current superpowers, thousands of nuclear weapons could be detonated. In a scenario around 4,400 nuclear weapons, 360 million people would perish right away. We have no other event like this to compare the death and destruction to. It's like humanity dropping an asteroid on itself. The nuclear winter that follows such an apocalyptic war would take our human calorie product as much as 90%. Not only would almost all of our agriculture take an immediate and deadly hit, the climate would take at least a decade to recover, because the war like this would specifically hit the world regions most of the food for humanity. Recovery will be much larger than other conflicts. Within 2 years, the global death toll to starvation rise to 5 billion. The mid-latitude countries like USA, China, Canada, the US, and much more percent of the population might survive. Humanity might never be the same again. While nowhere is truly safe, some nations in the southern hemisphere may fare well enough to endure while the rest of the world collapses. All the nuclear weapons stays in the hemisphere, so a few countries like Australia, New Zealand, or Argentina may be able to endure for a bunch of different reasons. Their nuclear winter would be milder. They have a lot of lifestyles and would not affected by crops, so they would probably stop exporting food and focus on keeping their own people alive, assuming aren't invading for their food by other starving nations. It's safe to say that the world becomes extremely unpleasant for a long time, and it's impossible to know how many people will have died and when the nuclear war ends. Case of human civilization will come. In the worst case, the civilization would collapse and the survivors would be thrown back thousands of years, slowly trying to recover in a world full of scars and graveness. Eventually, when they rebuild civilization, will they ever build nuclear weapons again? So that's the end of the video. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.